It's my pleasure at this point to introduce the woman who's going to moderate our panel this afternoon, Lynne Boorn. Lynne is an associate professor of teaching here at the Price School of Public Policy in the Smith Department of Real Estate. She is also, your title keeps changing. What are you now? The program manager? What are you? The director of all of our, basically, she knows everything about what we're teaching and why. We hired Lynne about 5 years ago. She comes to us from Cincinnati, distinguished career in the real estate business before getting a PhD in planning at the University of Cincinnati. And we feel very fortunate to have her here as part of our faculty. Lynne, please introduce your panel.
I will. Thank you so much. And you guys can feel free to come on up, our panelists. So I'm thrilled to introduce, and we're going to go through, and I'm actually going to allow each of the wonderful women that are joining me today to talk a bit about their career path and all of that. So I'll kind of get that going. But our panelists today are, and if you want to just kind of raise your hand to say who you are, because we took all of our name tags off here. But Kari Kaltenborn-Corey, who's president of Rancho Storage Center and Maven Hill Retail Advisors. Kari's right here on the front. Then we have Senator Vanessa Delgado, who's president of Azure Development. We have Jennifer McElyea, who is the managing partner of Ethos Real Estate. And then we also have Krystal Dry-Murphy, who's the chief operating officer of Jones & Jones Communities. So if you just want to give them a quick round as welcome. And I'll get us started in just a moment, but I think probably you saw when we sent out the invitations, or if not, or you don't recall, this is the professor in me, but I'm gonna lay the foundation. But today is really about celebrating entrepreneurship among these women real estate professionals. So we've got a lot of women who are in real estate, who are in the audience, also alums, but you don't hear as much about women that are starting their own businesses or carrying on entrepreneurial ventures. We've got actually 2 people that started businesses and 2 people that are leveraging businesses that were started by family members that are continuing to grow these businesses over time. So that's a very exciting aspect of the panel today. So I'm going to go ahead and get us kicked off. They know I'm about to ask this question, and not to be too rote, but I think we'll just start and work our way down, if that's okay, and then we kind of know where we're headed. And if you guys can tell us kind of each about your career journey, a little bit about kind of the background, and then how you ended up where you are. We'll get into more details clearly about like how you started the business and things, but just to kind of give us a little bit of background and give the audience a bit of background.
Sure. This was actually not my original plan. I, in high school, did an exchange in Germany and went to school in Germany for about 6 weeks and fell in love with Europe. And I actually wanted to work at a U.S. embassy in Europe somewhere. So when I came to USC for undergrad, I did an international relations major with a German minor. But my sophomore year is when 9/11 happened and the whole world changed. Even the classes offered were, I think I took a class called Weapons of Mass Destruction, History of War. And so it kind of was not exactly what I want to think about every day. So I switched my German minor for a business minor. And at the SC Career Fair, found the company I started working for, which was a real estate developer out of Century City. And that's where I got my start. I did 13 years with them in Century City. And at that time, my dad, who had started a real estate company in the 90s, was turning 70 and decided he was done. And it was just good timing. We sold the properties down here and we moved up there, and I've been there 5 years. So that's kind of where I got, and I'm trying to make the company my own and grow from there.
Great.
So I think you're going to find some similar themes. This was not my chosen career either. I grew up in a working class family. My dad has a kindergarten education and my mom has a 5th grade education. So education for me was a very big deal for them. And I grew up in the Boyle Heights area, but got a scholarship to go to school in Pasadena, an all-girls school. And I got to go to Stanford and then USC for my master's. but I chose a career in public administration. I thought that politics was the way I could transform communities. And I worked for 3 cities in 5 years. And that was like the red flag that I probably didn't like what I was doing. So much to my mom's disappointment, I had vested in the public PERS system, and I decided after getting a divorce when I was 25, and like I know this is not happy hour, but I'm going to tell you that part of the story, and having my daughter, who's actually here, she's a sophomore at USC, I decided that I wanted to focus on something that I loved, and I wanted to be a developer. I wanted to do what the guys on the other side did. So Isabella was 5 months old, and I quit my job and tried to become a developer. And I've been doing that for about 24 years. Or wait, you're 20. So okay, so it's been 20. 20 years. I absolutely love what I do. I get to work in the communities that I grew up in and try to use the experiences I've been awarded in life to help others. I'm a retired politician too, but that is probably a happy hour story.
I'll carry on the theme. My parents were both in public service. My dad was in the Army, and he was drafted during Vietnam, but was at the last minute sent to Germany, where he met my mom, and that's where I was raised. So Germany connection. And real estate was not even in my option set as a career. My dad's from the south side of Chicago. My mom's a daughter of a farmer. And, the idea that you can make money in real estate was not even, a known thing. So when we moved back to the States, when I went to college, I was pre-med, but my number one goal was just to make it to New York City. I was like, I just want to work in a very cosmopolitan place because I'd grown up internationally. And I also wanted to afford to live there. So I ended up getting a job in investment banking. I was placed in the real estate corporate finance group at Deutsche Bank, covering real estate companies and basically doing M&A and advisory work for big REITs and real estate related financial institutions, and did not like investment banking, but ended up loving real estate. When I first got placed in the group, I was like, am I doing property management? Like what? I don't even know what this real estate thing is. Ended up leaving the bank to go to a private equity firm and did a lot of transaction work on the acquisition side. It was real estate private equity. But in one of those fortuitous moments in life, saw an ad in the Wall Street Journal. I always look at Sonia because I love telling the story. It was I think the ad only ran one day for the MRED. And I knew I loved real estate, but I really was tired of just doing the Excel side of things. I remember someone in one of our deals mentioned FAR, and I was like, what is this FAR thing people are talking about? And I realized if someone had given me a piece of dirt, I would have no idea how it goes from being a piece of dirt to an income producing asset. And so it just so happened that the MRED, several alum and people from the group were in New York for ULI. So I popped by and I was just so blown away by the curriculum. Quit my job, moved to LA to do the MRED in 2006 or 2005. And then ended up getting a series of jobs in first real estate private equity after the MRED. Some of our operators that we were investing in went bankrupt, so I stepped in and got to entitle a bunch of projects in LA and really started having a love for the fact that development, particularly in California, is not only an entitlement process, but it's community engagement, it's political. Sometimes I felt like I was running a political campaign just for a project, but that's what being a developer is. And then slowly over the last decade, started focusing more on opportunities in public-private, because my personal thesis is, housing is a major issue in California, and the public sector can't solve it itself. So, if we can come up with models that really garner the trust of the public side, there's infinite private capital that wants to be in housing. And so Started my own company a year ago. We're backed by a handful of pension funds. And really our objective is to be a private market solution to our affordable housing crisis. So excited to be here and share lessons learned and answer any questions.
So my story is a little bit different, but there are similarities. So I didn't know that I was going to go or end up in real estate, but I grew up in a family that was in real estate. So my grandfather started the company that I now work at, and I work with my mom now. And so it was kind of always there. There was never pressure to join, but we grew up in it. I mean, it's been part of my life since I was literally born. So grew up in LA. After high school, went away to New Orleans for college. Then moved to San Diego. Actually found I needed to get a job. I studied finance undergrad, but wasn't really sure what I wanted to do. Found an ad in the newspaper back in the day. And it didn't say what the company's name was, and it didn't really say what it was for. But I went to the interview, found out more about the company. It turned out to be Fairfield Residential, which is a big developer, property manager, rehab company. And became an analyst there at their corporate office in San Diego for a couple years. Learned there, similar to what a lot of you were saying, what I did not like doing, which was sitting behind a computer all day, analyzing, and not really having any interaction with even the buildings. Like I had never really been to any of the buildings. I just kind of saw numbers and put together reports and reported the CFO and that kind of thing. But I knew it was a job. I knew I was learning a lot. I knew it was going to help me get to that next step, which I was hoping to come here to SC, which I did eventually do. I came from my MBA and my MRED. And it wasn't until I was in school at USC that, for whatever reason, I don't know why it took me so long, dawned on me what an incredible opportunity I have with the family business. And also almost a sense of responsibility kind of kicked in that, wow, I would be the third generation. That's not a very common thing. Let's give this a try. So after I graduated, I started at Jones & Jones, but I did not come in at the top by any means. So I started as a leasing agent, actually. So, I come out with my MBA, my MRED, go to a property and be a leasing agent, learn how that works. And then I got moved over to a little bit more of the maintenance side, and I oversaw a big project of installing 5,000 low-flow toilets across our portfolio. So I think what that did for me was give me some street cred with our employees, a lot of which have been with us, some since before I was even born. Okay, this is Krystal. We've known her since she was a little girl, but she's not coming in here kind of at the top, going to change everything and think she knows everything. I kind of came in, learned it from the ground up, and over the years, now 10 years, I am kind of, overseeing the company now, but I have an understanding of what goes on. And so that's kind of my story about how I got to where I am today. And, my day is never the same. It's always exciting, exciting in the good and the bad. There's hard parts and there's great parts. But I wouldn't trade it.
Yeah. Well, so some interesting themes for all of us, and particularly I'm looking out over the horizon at some of you that are just getting started. I see some of my students are, some kind of new entrants into the world of real estate. But just to kind of pull out a couple of key points that you guys just mentioned, but you don't have to love your first job. Right? I mean, if you take away nothing else from this, right, you can see that, as you go out, there are, and many of you know my background too, but you will have a career and it will have different aspects to it, right? You'll start with one thing and then you'll learn what you love about it and what you don't love about it, and then you do the next thing, right? So that's a big part of the transition into these different parts. Now,
I think also it's really good to learn what you don't like doing. Almost more so than what you do like.
Yeah, for sure.
Important.
So great kind of take, just even from, and so you guys can see why I was so excited about talking to this amazing group of women. So, all right, so now, thinking about that and kind of how you got going, I know that the unique part of this too is that this is new, people that are really on the entrepreneurial side. So love to talk, and I think I'll ask Jennifer to start us with this, of like, how did you get from, hey, I'm working and I've got a job and I'm doing this, to I am starting a business, and what did that kind of look like? And while it would probably be better to ask this as like question 3 or 4, I just know that like we'll get into big conversations, and I don't want to miss that, because I think that's really for many people of like, how did that even start, right? So do you want to just kick us off with that?
Sure. I mean, again, both my parents were public service servants, and they were like, just work for the government and get a pension. It's secure. And, so I am a very reluctant entrepreneur. But I think for me, it was a lesson I learned during the great financial crisis, where I worked for a bunch of hedge funds that partnered with the FDIC in buying many failed banks. And I learned how much money you could make by partnering with the government, because what happened was the FDIC didn't have the resources as far as talent to work out all these failed banks, all these loans, all these commercial real estate loans that were quote unquote toxic, and they didn't know what the value of the underlying collateral was. And they basically said, okay, and I see Ada over there, she was with me at the time, where basically they said, we need some private sector talent to come in here and value all this stuff. We will guarantee you will not lose money. You have to buy all these failed loans, but we will guarantee you won't lose money. And if you make money, you have to give us the vast majority of the upside, but you basically have no risk. And participating in something like that, which became the biggest money-making trade during the great financial crisis or coming out of it, showed me that being part of that and not being an equity owner, just being an employee, but doing so much of the work, showed me that, like, gosh, if you are an owner in a business, you really get disproportionate rewards. And I wanted to participate in that. And so I ended up working somewhere else for another 10 years, but started building the relationships around the people who would ultimately become my investors at that point. And I remember someone told me, it's going to take you nearly a decade to build some of these relationships, particularly with the institutional investors, because they are so slow to underwrite, and they want to see your track record, and they want you to build a track record. But I started about 10 years ago, and I said, one day I want to be an equity owner in what I'm doing. And the company I was working for ultimately ended up going through a restructure, and there was an opportunity to take the division I was running and spin it out and recapitalize it with a new investor. And that was sort of the moment where it was like, here's your chance to go off on your own. And it was during the pandemic, and it was, the market was really nebulous, and we were working remotely. Wouldn't have been my ideal moment to go off on my own, but sort of all the elements aligned. And some days I wake up and I'm like, oh my gosh, I run a company. When did this happen? I don't have a boss to tell me what to do, but I at this point wouldn't trade it for anything else.
So Vanessa, I think since you're kind of our other like pure startup, I'll hit you with it, and then we can kind of transition into like growing kind of the existing aspects of businesses. So do you want to kind of take us through your?
Yeah. So it feels so accidental when I talk about it, but I built 3 million square feet of shopping centers, but a lot of shopping patterns have changed in the last 6 years. So many of you probably shop online, and the big shopping centers I used to build for the teachers' pension fund, CalSTRS, we weren't doing those projects anymore. So my love was always to tackle an issue that I think is really pivotal for Latino families, which is the lack of affordable housing for working families. And so I wanted to work specifically on that. And I decided that the best way to do it, to control the projects that I got to work on, was to start my own company. But I was terrified. When I told you that I quit my job 20 years ago, I really did. I admire the spirit of that 25-year-old, but I had a 5-month-old, and I was getting a divorce, and I didn't have any savings. I learned what I didn't know. That was really it. And I ended up joining another firm for 11 years. I did the Ross program. Mary's here, she runs the Ross program. And I got additional training and loved building shopping centers, but I still had that desire to do something that was more direct for housing. So Isabella and I were on a trip to Jamaica, and I did forewarn her that I tell a lot of stories about her. And she was scared to jump off this waterfall in Jamaica. And really, like, my whole pitch to her was, you must conquer what scares you so that you can be, a complete self and discover where you can go. But she kind of threw it back on me after and said, you want to start your own company. You also talk about running for office and you don't do it. So, like, why should I listen to you, right? So it was a very good point. And I quit my job 3 weeks later. Now, I gave myself like a 2-month transition period, right? Because I was an executive at the firm, and it turned into a sabbatical, which was wonderful. It was a 9-month sabbatical where I was still taking a consulting fee, and I used the concept of me running to become the mayor of our city as a way to just explore if I really wanted to start my own company. I ended up winning my election, and I decided that I did want to start it. I started my company 7 years ago out of my garage. I took my daughter's college tuition money, and I spent it on buying properties. And I've learned so much. I've lost a lot of money. I have built, I own our own Starbucks now, and I'm getting to do homeless housing in Boyle Heights. We truly are doing workforce housing for families. So it's a lot, it's very humbling, all of it. It's not the glamour piece that maybe you all hear about, but I really do feel like I am making an impact for some families, and that makes it totally worthwhile. So highly recommend it.
Yeah, there you go. Goodbye, Richard. No, I'm just kidding. Thinking then about, so now with our other panelists, you guys have obviously kind of been involved in these businesses over the years, and thinking about now that you're kind of the next generation and you're overseeing this strategic aspect of it, of where do we want to go, where do we see, gaps in the market, or where we have some kind of a competitive advantage. I'll ask Kari and then Krystal if you guys just want to walk us through kind of now that you've come in and you're kind of taking the reins of this existing family enterprise. How does that look for you, and what do you do?
Sure. So we focus mostly on self-storage. We own and operate storage facilities up in suburbs of Seattle. And my dad has been involved in real estate. Well, actually, it started with my great uncle in Las Vegas. He did land development, and then my dad picked up on that with my mom, and they started a company, started flipping houses, and then did mobile home parks, and then worked their way up to storage, did a bunch of 1031 exchanges, trying to improve and buy bigger and bigger each time. And so I grew up cleaning storage units, painting doors, fences, all that fun stuff in high school. And when I have come back, right now we have 4 facilities. And one of those I've purchased in the last year. We've also remodeled one, and we bought some land to build another. And so I think my dad had kind of gone into retirement mode. Like I had said before, this was not my plan. And so now I'm trying to kick it back into growing. We have children. My 2 daughters are here. And I'm trying to plan for multi-generational, to give them opportunities and just to see where the market goes. I think you have to stay open. Obviously, we are in self-storage, so we're going to probably stay in that product type. But my experience from Magellan that I worked for in Los Angeles for 13 years, I think really gave me a different perspective working for a corporate company instead of starting out on my own like my dad did. He was very conservative. His money he's spending is his. Magellan, we had investors, so you have a different game plan different investment strategies. So he grew a little bit slower, but we own all of it. And so I have to kind of shift my thought process too now to that. And our goal is to grow and just keep going.
Yeah. How about you?
So just for a little context, what we do is own and manage multifamily assets throughout pretty much the greater Los Angeles area. We have a couple in Ventura, but we hold long term, so we don't sell, and we have a management company that manages those properties. So everything we own, we manage. Everything we manage, we own. And I just say that because when I joined, like I said, I started kind of from the ground up. And another thing that I did after I was there for a little while was go around and meet with literally every single person in the company. So we have about 100 employees, probably back then closer to like 85, 90, to just get their genuine feedback on how things are going, what are the pain points, what do you like? And I got some very valuable information. I think a lot of people really did open up honestly to me, and I saw that we needed to have a little bit of a culture shift inside the company. So we had, and when I say we, it's me and my mom who's here today, had some kind of tough things that we had to address that I thought were very important to make the company continue to get better. And I joke now that my job is to not mess up because I'm the third generation. I got to keep it going. But my other job is to make it better. And so I run the day-to-day. So a property management company of apartment buildings, it is everything you can imagine, almost every day. So there's never a boring moment. And on the other side, also, having 100 employees is a lot of employees that we were kind of talking before. The people side, the HR side, if you want to call it, is the toughest part of the business, period. Hands down, I think if you ask me, I don't know if you guys agree.
Probably the worst.
It's very
The worst and the
hard, delicate.
And I'm sure with COVID too. Dealing with the tenants and the employees.
A lot of times it's like, this is my daughter Kennedy, who's 7. It's like dealing with 7-year-olds. You're like, just get along
She
and do
means
your
that
job.
the best way, Kennedy.
So at the beginning, we had some kind of cultural things that we needed to address. That was tough. We did it though, and I think we're in a better place now. And so I kind of take care of now. I really do oversee the day-to-day, so that my mom, she's Peggy at work, but my mom today, can look for the opportunities to buy buildings. We've bought, since I've been there, done 2 large 1031 exchanges and bought 3 other buildings, I think. So we have about 3,000 units total now, but I try to take care of the day-to-day, and then when she comes across something exciting, then I get involved with her and we figure out if we want to purchase it and raise the money and all of that.
Exciting. I definitely want to make sure we've got time to talk about some of the nitty-gritty things about kind of just being women in business. But before I pivot to that, I'll just kind of do a quick, because I know especially for people that are maybe thinking about doing something more entrepreneurial and just trying to get a feel for it, maybe we just kind of quickly go through. So maybe if it's like a new acquisition or kind of structuring forward or some of the deals that are in place or the partnerships, just a little bit about the nuts and bolts about either how deals are structured and or how your partnership or your ownership of the business is structured, just to give people ideas of like, this is kind of what it looks like. Like, not fully how the sausage is made, but maybe a little, just to kind of touch on that part before we get into, do you have to take a breast pump on a plane with you? No. Anyway, do you want to, I'm sorry, I guess it is kind of becoming one and the other, but let's go ahead, if we don't mind. We'll just kind of walk our way down since you just finished off. Sure. So yeah, that's okay, Kari.
Sure. We, like I said, we use all of our own money. We don't have any investors or partners at this point. We have a really great relationship with a local bank that we've done business with they have all of our loans, so it's probably been 20 years. And they've been really, really supportive. I think once you have a great track record and they like to loan to you. They ask me all the time if I want more money, which is great. And so yeah, it's gotten so easy. And we have a relationship manager that we've had for years. I just text him. I say, Don, I found a property. Can I have a couple $1 million? And he said, sure, come sign the papers. So when we bought the last property, we bought
Nice thing about having a
March.
generational business, right?
Right, yeah, because he's worked with my dad forever. So when they know that you're going to produce, because they obviously make money off of your loan, and they're really supportive. They know our whole family. Like I've taken the kids to meetings with them, and so we do all of that. With our money, we don't have any other investors, but it's debt and equity and.
Great. Do you want to just go? We'll just go on down the line here.
Sure. Yeah. So I focus on public-private partnerships. So I use a lot of tax credits. You hear that term, grants, to create our projects. Most of our projects would not get done in the communities that I work in without that. So it varies. It depends on the structure. But if you recall in my story, I only had like the $200,000 that I had saved for Isabella's college. So that's all I had. And we were in the garage. So I had to take consulting work. We built 10 CVSs to keep the lights on and get some employees while I was acquiring properties. And I do ground up development. So that's my specialty. And we purchased a 2-acre lot that Michelle knows very well back there from City View. To entitle it for 48 homes that could be developed for working families. So, but we actually had applied first for a project in Boyle Heights, across the street from where I was born, down the street from where I went to school. And that was to be a permanent supportive housing, so for homeless families. And by that point, I'd spent the $200,000. So, when we got to the planning submittal to get our entitlements for the project, it's a 5-story building, mixed use. I charged the planning fees on 6 credit cards that I pulled. And we were successful. I got the entitlements. And at that point, I had to bring in a partner. In that case, it was a nonprofit. So they paid the balance of the equity needed to do the project. And if you see the project, it's on First and Boyle, across from Mariachi Plaza. It is a bit of a hole right now, so please don't judge it yet. It'll be ready next year. But I got to name the project after my grandmother, who is called La Guadalupe. And she was really the only person that said, as a young Latina growing up in Boyle Heights, that I could truly achieve anything that I wanted to. But she just made me promise that I had to do something to help others. So super proud of that. But now I try to balance, because we're a startup. I have to balance my projects with those that don't require as much capital. And because we all don't want to take partners. They outvote you. They don't necessarily aren't aligned necessarily with what you're doing, but half the time you need them. So, but it's all a balance.
I would echo that balance. I don't want to be negative, but I'm like, for people who come to me and say, hey, I want to start my own company in real estate. And I say, the best way to start your own company is already have a ton of money and already have a balance sheet. Because if you have to bring in partners, you're just diluting yourself along the way. But if you don't have those two things, you have to bring in partners. And so I'll be super transparent. The way we put our business together is we have a line of credit. And we're borrowing the money to pay the people, to pay our office overhead, and have, fortunately, fee revenue coming in from properties that we manage. But we have a partner. Our last deal that we did, that we closed in December, was an $80 million acquisition, multifamily. We got $50 million in a loan. $30 million of equity was needed. 85% of that money came from Goldman Sachs as our limited partner. 15% of that money came from our investors, of which we share a portion of that 15%. So me and my partner personally write that check. That was a $6 million check, of which we fund a very small percentage, but we have to have skin in the game. But we get paid fees to manage that asset, and we get a back-end promote, which is really sort of the upside that we're playing for. But the investor that partnered with us on the $6 million, they get a good share of that promote. And the limited partners know how we run our business and are very stingy on fees. So they know that the fees are just enough that we can, maybe pay off that line of credit and maybe keep our people employed. It's a constant balance between I need to staff up to find deals to acquire and stay in business and manage my properties. But you're always balancing that overhead with, okay, well, I can't sell this property because then I'm going to lose the fee stream, but it's a good time to sell. So I need to keep these fees, but I have to trade off with knowing, maybe there's some upside in the deal. So we'll sell, you get your promote, but you need to put some of that promote away for a rainy day when you don't have as much asset under management. So it is a huge balance and balancing act if you're starting without a bunch of assets already to invest in just getting the company up and running. So, I'm super transparent. You don't just open up shop without, leveraging. And it is fortunate that it is a business where you can bring in investors, but unlike tech companies, there isn't a deep VC market for people who want to start real estate, which I've always found surprising. I'm like, there are a lot of companies that have been losing money for years that can attract a lot of sort of platform level capital, but that money is really hard to find in real estate.
So we're kind of a combo, a little bit of all of these things, but these days we do have the benefit of having a lot of years of experience under our belt and relationships. So I'll just use the last building we bought as an example, because I have those numbers off the top of my head. So the building, we bought 154 units in Encino area. Purchase price round was about $51 million. We got a loan with a bank that we have a really good relationship with. We have a couple banks that we have long relationships with for $28 million. So we needed $23 million for the down payment. We raised $30 million, but a chunk of that is family, raised from our family directly. And the rest is investors buying limited partner shares, but they are friends and family because we have that successful long track record. So we go out, find the deal, and then raise the money. We don't have like a fund that we need to place, but it is only because we have that track record that we can go out and raise $30 million in a matter of 45 days, 45 days. And a lot of that is from my grandfather, his friends, who now are obviously getting very old or passing away, and then their kids are coming in. And then over time, we've brought in some new investors, but it's always, for us, we're lucky to be in a position where we bring in friends and family as investors, and they are silent partners. We create a general partnership. So for this building, it's Peggy and I on the general partner that really have the control of what we're doing. That's a lot of our money is from friends and family, and then our relationships with the bank, and then Jones & Jones comes in as the management company. So we also have control over managing the asset as well.
So so thank you for all of you guys going through all that. Super important. Now I know if I don't ask, some of the people in the audience will, I'm looking out for signs. I'm assuming I'm fine on time. Yeah, good. Okay. So I'll switch gears a little bit to touch on some of the more personal things. We talked about this. I always hesitate when we say, women in real estate. Well, because you'll hear like the movie stars, they get interviewed like, well, you don't ask Arnold Schwarzenegger about his kids or like what it's like to be whatever. But for the women in the house who have been pregnant, had babies, tried to work through all that, it is unique to a female biological circumstance. And so, I think it merits still the asking, even as wonderful a partner you might have in terms of help raising kids or whatever. I know you've done it on your own for the most part, Vanessa. But so let's just touch base on that a little bit and talk about kind of maybe some of the challenges or things that you've seen over time that maybe have helped, or just things you had to overcome and figure out in terms of dealing with, being a a parent and having children and being a woman specifically in that regard. So, and I don't, I'll pick somebody else to go first. So who has not gone first? I think.
Do you want me to go
yeah,
first?
Yeah, if you don't mind. Yeah, let's go. Let's do that. Yeah, let's go ahead and work our way through. So,
okay, so yeah, it's definitely, you have a unique set of challenges as a woman, especially if you want to have children. It's, it is a fact. It is something that comes into play. So Kennedy's here, she's 7, and we also have triplets at home that are 4.
Oh, that didn't affect you in the office at all.
Easy.
It is, as a mom, you're always the mom. You're always like the first one that your kids want, no matter how great of a father it is. They always seem to want their mom. So it's a challenge. You want to be present for your kids, but if you have this business itch, you got that too. You got to find this balance. When we found out I was pregnant with the triplets, I'm very, very lucky to have a very supportive husband who's also here. We decided that he would step back from his career to help with the kids so that I could focus on mine, which is not always something that, a husband is willing to do. So I'm very lucky that he has done that, and it allows me to focus at work. I know that when I go to work, Grandma's applauding for Kyle. That I can go to work and I can focus on my things and, come home and spend time with the kids. So I'm very, very lucky, and I think in the minority in that way, but that really helped me. That being said, when I had Kennedy and he was still working, I think I had Kennedy on Sunday, and I'm pretty sure I was back in the office on Wednesday. She was with me, but we had meetings, and when they're really little, you can just kind of keep them in the carrier thing. But it's like a lot of times, part of the unglamorous side of running a business is you just kind of got to do it. You got to make it work, and so we did, and it's all good. It's just an extra layer. And I will add, I haven't had to deal with this personally, but also as women, a lot of times the caretaking responsibility for our parents comes into play. And although this is not affecting me yet, I see it with a lot of my employees. When their parents are starting to get older, they need to step up and help their parents. So you kind of have it on both ends a lot of the time. So I think, as an employer, having flexibility in mind and an understanding and compassionate point of view is very, very important.
Well, and you've kind of answered 2 questions at once, so I'll kind of buckle those together then for the rest of you guys as you kind of go through, because I think it gets to a really key point that as women are moving their way up the ranks, starting businesses, being in more senior roles, it has really beneficial aspects to the overall working population, not just in real estate, obviously, but you're viewing your employees differently because of the experiences that you're having and you're sharing with them as a result. And nothing against your father or grandfather, but those were different situations. So your employees benefit as a result of kind of your worldview and the experiences that you're having. And so maybe as you answer it, if you feel that there are aspects of that you want to address as we go through, I think that'd be really good to share with the group as well. So thank you for combining those. Yeah.
I'm happy to jump in next. I mean, I have 2 boys. They're 6 and 9 now, but I was still an employee when I had them, and
Still great for the audience. Yeah.
Yeah. Nothing prepares you for motherhood until you're in it. And I remember realizing that the company at the time that I was working for didn't even have maternity leave. I just assumed it did, which is, in retrospect, I'm like, that was dumb. But I remember being like, wait, I have to take vacation to even have time off to be with my newborn? That's insane. So, now as an employer, I am super hardcore about, paid maternity leave or paid paternity leave, because if there is a partner, I think it's important they're also available to support the new mother. And I remember it was just a real rude awakening in sort of juggling the expectations of not wanting to appear like being a mother was hurting my work in any way. So I have a male partner in my business right now, but we've been working together for over a decade. And whenever he had to describe how it was when I was, my kids were younger, he's like, you just are ruthlessly efficient. And that's how it was like everything was just so, organized. There was no time for TV, social media, anything. It was just like work, parenting, and it's a juggle. I certainly felt like I worked far more, or I had less downtime and less free time than my male counterparts, just so I could keep up and not have anybody be able to say, well, you're slacking because you're just not on the game because you're spending time with your kids. I loved my job, so I'm not saying that as a complaint, but it definitely, I personally pushed myself, and maybe this was more of a, maybe I didn't have to push myself as hard. Maybe I could have given myself a little more grace, and maybe my employer didn't expect me to have to be completely on parity with any male colleagues or people in the same level. But it was challenging. And then, if you're a mother and you choose to nurse your child, there's like that added element of, oh my gosh, how am I going to deal with this during a meeting or if I'm traveling? And so it's just a lot more coordination and effort that has to come into play. But I also felt like I became more of an advocate for myself, because suddenly it was like, yeah, no, I need time to go, prep the milk for the kids, and I need to go deal with this thing, and I'm going to be a few minutes late, but guess what? I'm going to be late because my kid's sick and I have to pick them up from preschool, but I'm going to work 2 hours later. So it's just like, you just figure it out. And I don't see it as a hindrance, but I certainly take it into account with my employees now. I will say during COVID, seeing a lot of the dads who were like, oh my gosh, my kid's throwing up in the background. Like, I don't know, I'm like, oh, it leveled the playing field. And I think it changed some of the understanding of how hard it is to sort of juggle motherhood and work. I do think it has changed the perception a little bit, because some of that parenting fell on the men as well. So hopefully it changes the dynamic on a go-forward basis.
Yeah, so I come from a large Mexican family, and I kind of got tracked into thinking that I had to get married and have a child young because everybody else was. So I got married when I was 23, when I graduated from here, and I had Isabella, a year later. So, at 25, I was still working in government. So I feel lucky that I got a lot of opportunities, flexibilities when she was younger, and I was still learning. And plus, I have that huge Mexican family, so there was so many babysitters. Like, I hardly saw Isabella. So I feel very lucky in that. But now as an employer, I do want to say that I firmly believe that women make the best developers, because what we're doing is creating a place. And in shopping centers, like, how can we not design good shopping centers? Really. You know what it feels like, what you like to build a home. What really feels good about a place. So I believe intrinsically we make wonderful developers, but I do certain things so that people don't have to worry about certain issues. So for example, we align our day off schedule with the LAUSD schedule, so that most of the time that'll capture everybody's kids' day off. On Fridays, we get to go home at 3. I know that doesn't sound like a lot, but if you have to do like an errand or something that you don't want to do on the weekends, you could do that. And then just this whole concept that you can work after the kids go to sleep. I do it all the time. My daughter lives here now, so it's a little different. Like, I'm totally entrenched in what I do, and I am trying to find a little balance. It hasn't worked yet, but I do get a chance to focus completely on my company now, because I'm 45 and my daughter's 20. So I feel excited about what I can create, but I want to make sure that I leave whatever I create is a level playing field for any woman, any man, and whatever their issues are.
Well, Kari, we already heard your big little
Yeah,
Anderson.
they escaped. So it was my 4-month-old and my 6-year-old, and so my brain's like half here, half there. But my experience, I had my oldest daughter, I was still working at Magellan, so I had the corporate office. I had to take my work bag and my purse and my pump and my lunch and load it all up into the car. And
I remember those days, like
Yes,
6
yep.
bags,
So
and
many
I was
bags.
like, how many bags does it take to hold my life? Like, what?
and I was really lucky at Magellan. They were very supportive. They actually let me write my own maternity plan. And I submitted it to my boss, and then his wife called me. She said, you need to ask for more time off. She told me, she said, you need to take this many weeks off. When you come back, you need to come back part-time, and you need to work from home part-time, and then that'll give you like this many months. And so I just copied it down. I handed it to him. I said, I talked to Jane. He goes, okay.
It's like night and day compared to Jennifer's experience.
Yeah, and so it was great. It was still really stressful pumping. Luckily, I had an office. I could close and lock the door, pull the curtain down. But we did have an intercom system on the phone where you just pushed a button and you were just talking to someone in their office. They didn't have to answer. And so my boss has done that he did a couple of times. He pumped, hey, Kari, question. What's that noise? Well, I'm pumping. Oh, sorry. And he's like trying to get off the phone. Like, it's fine. We can talk while we pump. So then we moved. My daughter was about 1, so I had the other 2 kids, where we are now at home. So it's been a lot different. I have a home office. I just sit up there with them, and they sleep on my shoulder while I work, things like that. So it was a very different experience. But I will say the mom guilt is real. And the kids come to you first in the middle of the night. I'm like, he's right there sleeping. You don't have to always come here. You can wake him up too. But it's also, like you said, I wouldn't change it for anything. They're great, but flying. We flew down from Seattle. We had a 3-hour flight delay, and then we were on the plane for an hour while they were trying to change out something for the intercom. And she, I nursed and she napped, and we were still on the ground. I was like, that was supposed to be what we took off. Now what am I going to do for the next 2.5 hours, which it ended up being fine. But, it's those little things that you don't, think about that impact your day.
So I just got the little sign that it's time for Q&A, and I need to keep us on schedule because students have class at 2. But I will just say to the younger women in the audience, and knowing now where everybody's kind of come from, it all works out. It all works out. Kids will be fine. You'll be fine. So don't let us scare you. Let us give you a feeling of like a sisterhood that you can do it. We did it. It's messy. Ask for help, but you get through it. You can do it, okay? So Q&A.
I was just going to ask, when you were talking about possibly going out on your own and where you get the money, there's the option out there now of crowdsourcing and that sort of vertical for money, but I guess from my experience, it's been very difficult. And do you foresee it continuing to be a difficult and maybe not even feasible avenue compared to just institutional money or family money or your own somehow wealth, and that will kind of continue to be the way that real estate is done?
So I tried that a while back, and it just doesn't make any sense really for a larger deal. But if I was starting now and if I could do it differently, I'd find a deal that I knew. You all know of a property that's underutilized. There's tons around this community. Something that you know, where you can add value, where either you can do the legwork and you could even do it for free for a developer, something like that, but you're adding value to somebody else. And you get a part of the promote. So you heard Jen talk about that. What you're really working for is that ownership. So that's essentially, I work for free mostly on my development projects. And it's not until those projects are in a permanent loan, they're up, collecting rent, that I actually get paid. So if you had a deal that you could take to somebody a little bit bigger than you, and this is the ideal world to find those families, people, and we all look so different. We all have such different experiences. So I would start there. plugging Mary's networking events again. Price School has so many events. You find smaller developers like me who are willing to partner with people who have something unique. I don't know that the other ladies are at, like that level, but you'll find people like me who are starting and are willing to do that. So I think that's a great way to start, is just find that vacant lot, find something you can flip. That's how your family started the business. So
Yeah, they started flipping houses and then.
And that's what I was saying. My grandfather back in the day started very small. So you very small, and then you grow that asset, and then you can take that asset and get your next one and grow. But you got to, I think generally, especially if you want to try and do it on your own, you got to kind of start small and strategically. And like in our world, it's all about location, location, location. Either what that location is now or what it could be to help that asset grow in value, to help you get to the next one.
And don't be afraid to hear no, because you're going to hear it. Just know that at some point it does work out. I think I got like 12 no's on I'm getting them right now on loans, and I just have to buck up and keep going, because at some point it will work out and it'll totally be worth it when you get there. Just, stings a little along the way.
When you wanted to join your family business, did they have any opposition, or were they like really encouraging, or how did you start that?
I was really lucky, and I had a breakfast meeting with my mom a couple weeks ago because I was talking to a friend at actually my SC reunion who also was in the family business, and it's kind of gone very sour, and it's a bad, ugly situation and the opposite of what we have going on. And like I said, I didn't come in at the top and change everything. I started at the bottom and came up, so I had a good understanding. But I have to say, to my mom's credit, she's always given me a seat at the table and really listened to what I had to say, not always agreeing with it. But at the same time, on the flip side, I think I worked my butt off. I've proven myself. And I think I earned that. But I've also been very lucky that we work so well together. We're kind of like good cop, bad cop. So our personalities are very different, and we work well together. So I think it's a combo. I've earned and proven myself, but I've also been given a seat at the table, and it doesn't always happen like that. I don't know about you, Kari.
Yeah, no, my dad was very excited. I spent the 13 years learning the industry here, and so when he decided to retire, it kind of all worked. It was at the same time Magellan, the investor, decided to sell the property, so there were no storage properties for me to manage anymore, and they were going to start something new. I could have stayed on, but my dad was ready to retire. Both of our families were there. My parents and my husband's parents were there in the same town, so we had our children, talking about babysitting. And the hardest part was the transition. He'd been doing it by himself for 45 years. And so he had a routine. And I was coming in and, changing the routine a little bit and trying to get involved. And so that was probably the biggest challenge, was him letting go a little bit. And even though I knew the industry and how to run the business, it was running his business that he was more concerned about. So it's been really, really great, and we've gotten over that hump of transition. And so I do everything. He mostly just calls and makes sure, did you do this? Did you do that? Are you sure that's done? But so far, so good.
And I work with my little brother. But I think it's a little bit about what you said. You said she's Peggy in the office.
Yes.
So my brother is Ariel in the office, but I call him Jay at home, which is, so it does help. Like it's a separation. You have to respect the boundary. Mm-hmm. And I am dying, no pressure, Isa, but to have Isa join the company. But I have to, I don't know what situation you're in, but it may not be what everybody loves. So I have to just give
and I would add to that slightly. I worked in a family business for quite some time before shifting gears. And, what you've heard kind of in the themes, and even for, Jennifer starting this business and all that, I don't want to be discouraging if you've got big dreams and you want to start your business tomorrow when you graduate and all that. But a lot of benefit comes from working for someone else because, I had a significant career before I went and worked with my dad, who was the person I worked with. And, when you come in and you've got your own experience and you've got your own resume and you've gotten the kudos and the different aspects, you can enter it not just for them, other people, not just your family members, but for their colleagues to see you, but also will give you a certain presence when you come in the room of, hey, I've got this. I know how to do these things. So whether it's starting a business or joining a family business, that can be extremely helpful too, I think, in making that transition. Even if your family member thinks you are just the top of the world, sometimes and I know it from, other people who've joined family businesses, very well-established companies, getting that experience ahead of time going in can really help your credibility and also your confidence. So, okay, so we need to wrap up, but I'm going to have you guys just stay. I'm going to invite Richard up for a moment to kind of close us out. But before anyone gets up, don't leave because we have a different kind of announcement to make. But I just want to thank our panel.
You guys were awesome. Thank you so much. It was great. Yeah.
And by the way, I still get rejected all the time too. So you have to live with, we publish papers for a living. And so if you do that, you're going to get rejected all the time. So don't, for young people, rejection is just part of life. Just move on. It's going to happen. If it never happens, then, well, you kind of wonder what you're trying to do if it never happens. So I thought, Vanessa, your advice on that was just so spot on. So I've been in this job for 15 years, and I've had a partner for 15 years, Sonia Civilian. And over that 15 years, a number of things have happened. We have gotten a real estate department. We have gotten the real estate department named. We have had a new degree program, the Bachelor's of Real Estate Development, which now has more than 300 students in it. And it didn't even exist 7 years ago. I think it's 7 years old now, yeah. We have the Emerald degree named and endowed. And none of this could have happened if it weren't for Sonia Civilian. And so between what I'll say is a combination of her leadership and her know-how about the university, which is, believe me, navigating the USC bureaucracy is, well, something I don't do because I have Sonia around to do it. I've had Sonia around to do it. Is quite remarkable. And she is now, she has stepped down into a half-time role as an advisor to the dean on real estate matters and real estate fundraising matters. She has left her position as director of our degree programs. That is now in the capable hands of Russ Summer, and we're delighted that she basically groomed Russ so that he is in such a great position to take over and be a leader in the group. And so, and the final thing I should mention is I'm pretty sure that when I applied for this job, had Sonia vetoed me, there is no way I would have gotten the job. And this is my dream job, has been my dream job. So thank you, Sonia, for not vetoing me in 2008. So we would like to show our appreciation to Sonia. And so we have this SC letter jacket for her. Sonia, please come up and lettering saying Civilian on it. And I guess I should have, yeah.
Okay, we'll put it on later.
You'll put it on later?
We'll put it on later, but thank you.
Okay,
This
all right.
is so nice.
And then we also have from the Lusk staff.
Oh my gosh, I can't hold everything.
And this is, you can tell it's a Marilyn Ellis special. The way
Yes,
the
I can
basket is
see
put
that.
together is Marilyn here.
Thank you.
And so,
Thank you.
thank you for everything you've done for
I
us.
appreciate that.
For the last, how many years at USC?
I've been at US, came as a freshman in 1978, and I've never left.
So if I can do math, that's 35 years.
There you go.
Awesome.
All right.
Thank you.
So
Thank
thank
you.
you.
Thank you, everyone.